Hello, guys, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 1, Exposition with James Summers. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Inked Podcast. It is a new season of the show, and that means it is time to narrow down our scope of writing and focus in on a single part of it. This season of the show is focusing on the plot of our stories, and we are going to break it down, doing separate episodes about each branch of our plot tree. And to kick us off is our chat about exposition. And here to help me talk about this is Mr. James Summers. So, how are you doing today, James?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good, and I'm so happy that you're doing well. James is guesting today, and I am so excited to have him, but you may recognize his voice, and that is because he is one of our amazing team members here at The Inked. He has hosted a couple of episodes that you will hear in the future, as well as having hosted Season 1, Episode 1 of our show when I was in a bit of a pickle, which I still appreciate so very much him doing. But as for James himself, James Summers is a homeschooled teenager who loves to write from Mississippi. He loves books and all things with words. He has been writing poetry for as long as he can remember, but he started taking it seriously about 5 years ago. Now he writes mostly fantasy, dystopian, and hard science fiction. His current work in progress is a novel entitled Beneath a Savage Sky, a story of survival against all odds set in the islands of Indonesia. He hopes to one day have one of his works published, but currently he has 2 items of his work published, a non-fiction article entitled Social Media Help or Harm for Today's Youth in the local newspaper, and a copy of a poem he wrote entitled Oh Homeschool, published in a nationally read children's magazine, Spider. He has also written many academic papers, but one in particular that he enjoyed was one called Rats in Tanks on the use of rodents in warfare. I'm sorry, my words are tumbling, but it's okay. Which he adapted into an award-winning speech. And recently, he won first place in the Point A to Point Z contest by the White County Writers Group for writing a story that was under 500 words, had exactly 26 sentences, and each of those sentences started with a single letter of the alphabet in order, which to me sounds absolutely insane, and I don't think I could do that. So we applaud him for doing that. When James isn't writing, he loves to read, especially fantasy and dystopian, but he also enjoys visiting with his friends and family, playing board games, and other assorted activities. So that is James for you, but without further ado, are you ready to just dive into today's questions, James?
Yep, let's do it.
All right, a little bit of a forewarning for you guys. James did help come up with some of these questions, but I also put him on the spot for this episode, so we will give him some grace if he needs a minute to think through his answers. But our first question for today is, since we are talking about exposition, what is exposition in your own words?
So, in my own words, I would say the exposition of a story is, put simply, the beginning. Basically, what starts, what sends you off to be gripped and dragged into the story.
Mm-hmm. So I 100% agree with that. Your exposition is the beginning of your story. It's kind of the building of your story. It's setting the scene for everything involving your characters, your setting, your like backstories, etc., etc. So that's why exposition is like really important. So, moving into our next question, which is what do you think should be included in the exposition of our stories?
Hmm. So, I would say definitely one of the first things you want to start off with, every writing teacher will tell you, you need to introduce your main character chapter one.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of argument over prologues. We're not going to get into that, but, or at least I'm not going to get into that. You might. Uh, I would say definitely introduce your character. You want to give a setting and give a little bit of their personality without telling too much because you kind of want to get to know them as you go. So you don't just want a big slam of like this person is personality type B and all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you also I would say lastly is you really want to get a feel for how the story is going to go. So if you want to write kind of a serious fantasy war novel, you don't want your first chapter to set the mood for a comedy, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can have exceptions to that. Most of the time, you want that first chapter to set the mood. I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to say. It's just setting the mood for the story. Set the mood for the story.
Mm-hmm. So personally, when you talk about prologues, and I I'm probably gonna have an episode about prologues and epilogues at some point at like the end of this season of the show. Just because those are like a whole nother thing in and of themselves. I personally think they're optional. If you feel like you need one, then that's great. Normally, it's a great starting point to kind of like bump your story off or like to give some like additional lore or backstory. That's what I use them for most of the time, at least. Um, but as for like what you said should be included and shouldn't be included, I will say for sure including, I'm sorry if you guys can hear a baby crying in the background. I swear she's okay. My niece, I guess, fell or hit her head or something. She's okay. But I will say that what should be included is definitely introducing your character, especially like their physical features. That's something that a lot of authors miss. And I say a lot, but it's probably just a lot of authors I read, but a lot of them miss like that physical description of the character. So like if they don't do that, then I picture their character probably totally different than they will picture their character. So like if I see a like poster of this character that I've been picturing as someone totally different, then that normally throws me off a little bit. So definitely keep those physical like descriptions in your exposition for sure. Um, and
Yeah, you should. Yeah, that should definitely. I can't believe I forgot about that, but you're absolutely right. You should 100% do that.
it's a big thing. I know physical descriptions can be difficult, and we'll talk about those later. I'm pretty sure that the guest for that episode is actually my sister, so she's gonna have a lot of cool thoughts about that. But moving on to our next question, because like I said, my biggest thing is just the physical descriptions. Definitely make sure those are in your exposition, and if you want to do like description of your world as well, that's also super important. But that's only more important if you're writing like fantasy and you have this complex world that you've created because you need to shine that world because clearly you made it, you spent time on it, you need to show it off a little bit. Um, but moving in to our next question, like I said, is why did I? That's a weird question. We're gonna skip that one. That one's weird. Okay, so the next question that we had is writing exposition well. How do we do it?
So, as a bit of a lead into my answer, I would say, in my opinion, exposition is like the most important part of the story because the exposition, that first page, is either going to be what keeps you reading or makes you throw the book out the window,
Mm-hmm.
which I totally haven't done before. Uh, that's a joke. I don't make it a habit to throw things.
I can
Uh,
guarantee you, I've probably thrown a book out the window.
I've at least thrown it across the room once
Oh
or
yeah,
twice.
across the room is a little less harsh. I may have thrown one out the window once, but we're not
Mm,
going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about
yeah,
that book.
you're
I
incriminating
know I
yourself right
am.
now.
I'm like I feel like such a horrible book nerd because I can't bring myself to write in books, but I feel okay throwing it out the window. Um, moving on.
Oh
Moving
yeah.
on from
Okay.
my wrongdoings.
Okay. So I would say you want to get your audience's attention immediately. So you want to have something that will catch their attention. You either want to have some people jump right into the action. I personally am not a huge fan of like, I mean, I've read books before where they're like, and the sword sliced towards him, and I'm like, hold on, back up, rewind, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
You can do that. That can be really good to grip your attention, but it can also confuse
Mm-hmm.
your reader. Dialogue is a really good thing as well, just to say like what happened or have a conversation to start it off. My personal favorite to start an exposition well is going to be the what's the right word for it? The unexpected, the unique way to start it. Like in a post-apocalyptic story that I wrote, it started off with, before we begin, I want to be clear on something. I did not mess up the world. That honor belongs to my parents. And that's how it
Those are
starts.
always the
And
best.
now,
They're so good.
yeah, so that's how I personally like to start off stories. That's how I would say is my personal favorite exposition because it grabs you immediately wanting to know
Hmm.
why, how, all the details.
Yeah, for sure. So that actually answers the question that we skipped over, as well as talking about writing exposition well. So clearly, I was smart to skip over that question. Um, but but yeah, for sure. I will say one of my favorite openings I personally have ever written was I was writing a short story, and the first like sentence of the first chapter, I did have a prologue for this story, but the first sentence of that chapter was yes, my mother was right. I will make a great queen, but just not today. And
Mm,
like I got so many people that were like, that was such a good opening line, and I was like really proud of that line. And so that's been like one of my favorite expositions I ever wrote, especially since that first sentence is so hard to write because people will
yeah,
remember that first sentence. Like,
yeah. I mean, think about The Hobbit. The Hobbit is like the most quotable first line
absolutely.
ever.
I wish I could quote it off my head, and I know I can, but
And we now
for
descend
some
into
reason
silence because none of
for
us can
some
quote it.
reason I'm drawing a blank. Um,
In a deep, dark hole somewhere, there lived a
yeah,
hobbit.
it's
I know
it's the
there's
whole like
that.
description of the Hobbit hole because it's like not a wet
Now I feel so
sticky hole.
ashamed.
It's good. I,
Yeah.
go read the Hobbit, guys. Don't rely on us to tell you what the first line is because clearly we know it, but we don't know it. Um,
I have a vague
Uh,
idea.
but yeah, so like that's those are really fun like openings, and I absolutely think they're amazing. I told my friend she recently suggested me to read a book, and it's called Heartless, and it was written by Marissa Myers, and she was like bear through the beginning of it because once you get past that you're gonna love the book like whatever, and I already love Marissa Myers, so I was like I'm probably already sold on it, but um, I opened the book and read the first sentence, and the first sentence of that book is three luscious lemon tarts glisten up at Catherine. And I immediately was hooked. Like, forget it, forget it. I want to know why the heck these tarts are important. Okay, I have a thing for food.
Mm. Why are you spending so much time and so many adjectives
Exactly.
describing a
I
tart?
also have a thing for food. So I'm like, if you start a chapter with food, I want to know why, and like I'm already interested.
Mhm.
Um, that was a rabbit trail I went on. But moving on to our next question, we are almost out of time, so I'm assuming this will probably be our last question for the day. But um, our question is there a time when you should not write an exposition?
So that's a trick question. That's one of the questions that you can thank um, another member of our team for, which I told him he should not include because it was too mean. But yet here I
I
am.
think okay, I think I know
Um,
who you're talking about, and I have a feeling that he would absolutely make sure that I asked whoever this question.
he would definitely. So I would say, so the definition of exposition is literally just the beginning of the
Roughly,
story.
yes.
Yes, in basic terms. So I would say it's not really possible to start a story without an exposition because an exposition is just when
Mm-hmm.
the story begins. Like even if it picks up in the middle of a scene, it's still the beginning. So I would say a better way is yes, you can start a story without giving all the background like you normally see in an exposition. But since exposition is just the beginning, I can't say that I will be positive that you could really do that because I don't see how you could
So
do that. But then again, writing is very flexible.
I actually have
So,
a couple of opinions
oh,
on
you were
this.
saying something. I'm sorry.
Um, Purely because I have
Okay.
thought about this because I saw that you guys came up with this question, and I was really curious about whether it was actually possible or not. And so I racked my brain and I was like, you're right. You're right in what you said. There is no way that you can have a story without having an exposition. But here's what you can do. So when we say exposition in like this particular episode, we're talking about like that beginning chunk of your story. But something that you can do is every single chapter be almost like a mini story. And so you have it has like its own
Mm.
exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, denouement, like everything. It has everything in each individual chapter of the book. And so like obviously you can get away with that, and you can also get away with throwing your reader skipping exposition and throwing them directly into the action, which would be throwing them to your rising action and
Hmm.
heading straight into your like your climax and everything, which you're going to have to give exposition eventually. That's just a way that you can do it without keeping it in order. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Yes, that's 100% possible. Like the first thing that came to my
Oh
head
yeah.
was like Little Women. Each of those chapters roughly have their own storyline that all play into an overarching narrative. So yeah, that absolutely makes sense, and I definitely
Mhm.
agree with you on that one.
Okay, well, that is all of the time we have for today. So, as always, thank you, James, for being here. And
Of
again,
course.
as always, thank you to our listeners for being here, and we will see you in our next episode. Bye, guys.